of you who have already joined, very punctual. The clock has struck 3 p.m. here in Stockholm, Sweden, and 2 p.m. in the UK. You're having a little bit more of a dreary day, it sounded like, than we are here, Susan.
Yeah, I'm just looking outside. It's kind of brightening up a little bit, but it's still really cloudy. And we say in Scotland, dreich is the word. It's like just dreich, just dull and dark and damp and wet and blech.
Well, it would be great to hear where people are calling in from. Feel free to use the chat to be able to say hi and where it is that you're calling in from as well. My name is Sam Jenks, CRO at Kodiak Hub, and we have the founder and managing director, also known as the Mistress of Data from the classification guru, Susan Walsh, with us today. Susan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. This is great.
We're looking forward to today's session, really digging into supplier data, the needs that you might have today to get that data clean for the successes of AI tomorrow, and also how you could be able to really leverage supplier management solutions such as Kodiak Hub to be able to, create success for tomorrow. Susan, as the kind of queen of classification, my spiritual guru of supplier data, what do you think that this session is going to hold when it comes to kind of high level tips and tricks that you have for people?
I mean, we may be preaching to the converted already, but if we can get people to go and spread the message further, that would be great, because you have a great tool and it does great things, but it can do even greater things with cleaner data. And that is true of every single piece of tech that you have, even if it's just a spreadsheet. The cleaner and more accurate the data you have, the better insights, the better decisions you can make. The more opportunities you can find in your data, spot risk, fraud, all those there's so many benefits. But it's getting the decision makers to buy into that. That's the challenge.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's about lifting the hood and tinkering with the things that are tough to be able to face, right?
Yeah, I might show you a few nasties later on in the session today.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing some of those data horror stories in that case
I'm
as
just
well.
looking at all the different places that people have joined in from. Like, we literally are global today. That's amazing.
Very exciting. Yeah, everywhere from Saddleworth to Malaysia, Panama to Hungary. Very international group. So thanks for writing into the chat. Make sure to keep your voting fingers ready as well. We're going to have some polls that we're going to be distributing during the session. We also, of course, will make sure to be able to mark any questions that come in. If you have questions during the session for me or Susan, or about today's content, or just general questions that you want to be able to throw out there for us to discuss, make sure to add those into the chat line, and we'll then come back around to them during the Q&A, or if, of course, they fit into the content, then we'll try and weave those into content as well. I wanted to start with a quick little view of the agenda that we have for today. So we're going to start by digging a little bit into the state of AI in 2025 and what that means for procurement. We're going to look a little bit at the types of data that procurement needs to start defining and keeping an eye on. But of course, we're going to look at how to start getting that data clean. That's where we're going to hand the word over to Susan Walsh of the Classification Guru, who's going to give us an understanding of what clean and dirty data looks like. We have some fun exercises for the gang to be able to see what you guys would classify your data, or how you would classify your data. We're going to also then speak about how a smart SRM plays a role in leveraging AI and leveraging clean supplier data. And then, of course, finish off with a questions and answer session at the end as well. Without further ado, then I think we should get into content. What do you say, Susan?
Let's do it.
All right. AI. It's everywhere, it's everywhere, it's everywhere. In fact, we have a little PSA from AI, I think, before we get into the session. Sorry, I forgot.
For me?
I think for you, yeah.
Hey, procurement peeps, I'm artificial intelligence, and you've probably been hearing a lot of hype about me and how I'm transforming procurement. But unfortunately, I can only work as good as the data I'm given, and I know that many of you are still struggling with your supplier data. Luckily, today's webinar is going to inspire you to harness the power of your data and leverage innovative SRM solutions to future-proof your procurement. So welcome to today's webinar, Garbage In, Garbage out. Supplier data you need today for AI success tomorrow.
I love that.
AI is apparently Daft Punk, but it's all the same.
Also clearly living in a Nordic country with furnitures and decor like that.
Indeed. No, I mean AI this, AI that, right? It's all over the place. It's AI driven, it's AI native. If you haven't been subject to this AI buzz during the past 18 to 24 months, I'd like you to either check your pulse or your hearing, right? Or come out from under the rock that you're living under. I mean, it's undoubtedly the talk of the town, right? And
well, actually,
funny,
maybe sorry, I
no,
read
please.
in the news in the US, one of the government, she'd called it A1 instead of AI by accident. So maybe there are people out there that don't think it's A1 and not AI. Who knows?
That's a perfect example. Maybe she needs to come out from under her rock, right? I hope she wasn't working in the government in the US.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that's so surprising, but we won't get into politics.
Yeah.
I mean, the funny thing is that we saw this same hype a few years ago. There was a little something called blockchain that came around, right? It was the new kid on the block for about 5 years. But I think unlike blockchain's rather speedy depreciation, we're seeing AI application is here and it's here to stay, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, even before the blockchain, remember OCR and document scanning? It's going to take all our jobs. And actually, it made a lot of people's jobs nicer. So
100%. And I think that this is what we're seeing, right? Seen on screen here is a Boston consulting group study where they've captured the spending trends. And it's a little bit small, but at the top, you can be able to see within the spending trends that on average, respondents expected that their 2025 IT spending was going to grow 4.6 year over year. So that percentage alone is pretty significant, that IT spending as a whole is going to grow. Seen in the poll position, as you see there, 40, I believe, yes, 8% of the respondents to this particular poll had also then said that they were going to spend on AI and ML solutions in this upcoming year and planning to increase spending with nearly 18% from
I really want to
Q1
dig into
of
that question
2024.
more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Do they actually even know what AI or Gen AI they need? Or are they just like, oh, let's just buy some?
Well, people are opening up budgets for it. They're loosening their purses for it, right? And this is very interesting to be able to see. I think that, we have to understand why are we applying the AI though, right? And that's a very important thing because AI is going to create a big shift and impact procurement in the next 5 years, but not applied in the correct way. It's not going to do the things that we expect it to in that case. And I think that the scene is set for a transformative decade, but we have to, again, ask ourselves why. You mentioned it just now, right, Susan? Some of those applications of AI within procurement. And I think, self-driving procurement, where's our jobs going to go? I don't think that we need to worry about that quite yet. There is great applications and it can augment the work, especially a lot of that really operational and tactical work that is so time consuming, right? These are just a few examples of AI within procurement as well. ML, NLP, OCR, and Gen AI, doing things that otherwise can sometimes be very time consuming, but again, at a rather operational and tactical level, rather than being anything that's really going to be able to create more quote unquote strategic value for the procurement function. I think that, of course, though, the foundation of these things is good data, which we're going to get into in just a bit. Have you seen, I was curious to ask you, Susan, have you seen any of these impacting the businesses that you're working in and these applications, really making a push?
Yes and no. And actually, so I've finished writing the second edition of Between the Spreadsheets, my book, which is coming out later this year. And I have a whole chapter on AI, Gen AI in procurement, because like you say, there are some areas where it's fantastic, like, going through contracts and picking out the main points. And then I've got examples of how terrible it can be at classifying spend data if it's not trained on any data, and all of this comes down to clean data, and varying degrees of success and use. It's about using it wisely and not blindly. You have to still know what good or bad looks like and be able to tell if it's right or wrong, or you can't just buy this stuff and expect it to work.
Yeah, and I think that the artificial intelligence, layered over, of course, a data set that's dirty, or for example, without human intelligence as cross-checking it, going to be an issue nonetheless, right? And I think that
Yeah, and
we can't trust blindly.
yeah, and if you're pulling multiple data sources together, the columns might be named slightly different, like, supplier, supplier name, company, company name, supplier company, like all different kinds of things. And then you've got to make sure that all that is tied in together properly and that you're not accidentally merging the wrong columns together, because that can happen too.
Yeah.
It goes on.
I think our caveat, right? Our reality check in a lot of ways. Artificial intelligence, in a lot of ways, is as good as the data that it's given. And I think that I did a quick little example here with ChatGPT before we came in, and I'll spotlight this particular content so that everybody can be able to see it as well. On the left-hand side of the screen is a simple prompt where I asked, what is the weather like today? On the right-hand side of the screen, I asked, I'm located in this particular destination. I would like to know what the weather is like today. I'd like to know the 10-day forecast. I'd like to know if this is a particularly warm or cold day for this time of the year. What can I expect for the upcoming month? We see the richness of the response is, of course, an output of the richness of the input. Again, another kind of, indication that when we're looking to be able to get good outputs from AI, we of course need to focus on what in fact is the inputs, whether we're prompting it or of course if this is reading off of an existing data set. And it is, quite interesting, within this, because it's this age-old adage of garbage in, garbage out, right? While the smartness of AI can definitely augment the way that we work, I use it every single day in my day-to-day work, right? But it's ensuring I'm working smarter, not harder. But this age-old principle remains. If I'm not prompting it correctly, if I'm not inputting the right inputs, then the outputs are going to be just as poor in that case, or not as rich.
And how many decades have we been saying this now, since we were kids? Right. Because whatever the tech or the process is at the time, it's always been about clean data, and it's always the bit that gets forgotten.
Yeah. It's quite interesting. I just about every demo I do nowadays, I get asked by procurement teams, and I talk with, hundreds of procurement teams every single quarter, asking me, how are you using AI? How is AI being applied in your system? Right. But what they're not asking is, are we in fact ready for AI? I mean, I get it, right? Yeah. AI is the buzzword of the day, and the purse strings are loosening, and they should be, right? The applications are plentiful, but I think that while we lay out our applications of our AI in Kodiak, right, that we're applying and, touch upon our AI roadmap, I see a lot of heads nodding and kind of satisfied approval, right? But here's the thing. Do we really know what it is that we want to be able to apply the AI for, right? If we don't know where AI can actually help, we're just buying into the hype. We need to start asking the question, not do you have AI in your system, but ask your team, do we have clear use cases for AI? What problems could AI realistically solve for us? Do we even know what AI applications are out there for procurement, right? And I think that this is kind of like Simon Sinek's golden circle, right?
Yeah.
Start with the why and then figure out the how and the what.
And also, like in some cases, do we even have the data we need for AI? You might not even be collecting it at the point of, I work with some supplier clients who only have a supplier name and a value. There's no invoice description. There's no GL codes. There's literally nothing.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that information, you've got to start from scratch. You can't retroactively go and find a lot of that stuff.
Agreed. The inputs again lead to the outputs. And let's be honest, right? There's no shortage of challenges on your guys' desk currently, right? There's not only the traditional role of procurement, where I would say that everybody else's view on procurement, we've always known that procurement is much broader than this, right? But there's a lot of new challenges and responsibility. I mean, look at what we're standing in front of when it comes to the requirements on creating supply chain transparency, and resilience, right? There's new regulations in the markets, there's geopolitical disruptions, and all the while, you guys are expected to try and find new modes of operating, new innovations, and new ways to be able to really collaborate with your vendor base, right? The challenges and the expectations are continuing to surmount. And amidst these kind of external challenges, what we also see is that there's an equal internal challenge on people, process, and technology, right? Making sense of supply chain data, which is really the foundation to those three blocks of people, process, and technology, right, is a continuous challenge in procurement. And as our founder always likes to say, procurement is drowning in information, but starved for knowledge. And I think that she says this because she recognizes that data is often managed, but it rarely drives insights, right? It's created and then released. Or, for example, it's incomplete, like Susan just talked about. It becomes exhaust, right? It's going out into the ether and not coming back. It's created sometimes and also then not managed, which also then creates dirty data or data debt, right? And as we speak about, supplier data, you need to today see the successes of technology applications tomorrow, right? The data that you are inputting is going to be the success that you see tomorrow. And let us remember, as our VP of product likes to say, valuable data can come from the most unexpected places. So we wanted to take a second to talk about what do we mean by valuable data. You have a lot of data within your supply chain, right? We find it easiest in our business to segment this into 4 quadrants when we talk about data: structured and unstructured, as well as then the internal, in-company and proprietary data, or external, open source and publicly commoditized data. Now, this provides a simple framework to understand what kind of data do we have and what kind of data do we need more insight into as well. Now, I'm curious from your side, Susan, because you work with businesses with a lot of data, where do you feel like people are struggling the most, but also have the most opportunity here?
I think that most people probably have a lot of externally sourced data. And the big problem with that is, how do you know the origins of it? Is it verifiable? Is it trustworthy? Because, people don't actually know what data they need internally. So they try to get a lot of that information externally. And a great example for you is, I've had quite a few different companies ask me if I can source tax IDs for companies. And I always say no, because the information that's out there is not reliable. There's even if you ask ChatGPT, it tells you need to contact the company directly. So you really need to contact your own supplier to verify that information. You can, of course, go and get that. And there will be some companies out there who have curated a list and it is accurate, but how do you know the good ones from the bad?
And I think that is a perfect example of data that potentially should actually be considered in company proprietary structured data. But
like your supplier setup, that should be one of the questions.
But people are viewing something like that actually as a third-party data set that is externally commoditized and structured data, right? When in reality, it's something that a business needs to try and own in that case, or source from an external unstructured source, but then of course verify it to structure it up in that way.
Actually another one as well is a DUNS number, because if you use the DUNS tool or the API, you put a company name in and it will give you a range of options of DUNS numbers, and you have to choose one. It's anyone's guess which number it is, so having that direct from the horse's mouth, as they say, from your supplier, collect that information at the very start. It's so much more useful and time saving, and hopefully will cause less problems down the line as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So a question that you don't need to answer, but think for a second. Where do you think that the most data sits within your business, if you had to be able to guess? You can actually use the chat line here and quickly just drop a line.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know that.
Yeah. Where do you think that the most data sits within your particular business?
I want to, like, before people start typing, I want to say if it's procurement, then possibly finance, but it could be IT. I mean, or people might not know. That's
No, I was meaning in these quadrants, right? If we look at
okay, sorry.
structured company data,
Yeah.
structured external data, if we're looking then at the bottom, is it company unstructured data or external unstructured data? Where's the most data in your particular business? Where is your supplier data sitting?
Could be, I
See
don't
then
know.
that those that have written into the chat, some of those have said ERP. Maybe the case is that we don't know. Well, I can tell you with almost 100% certainty, and this is a shocking thing to a lot of people as well, that the real bulk of your data sits within unstructured data, contracts, documents, media, emails, calls, and so much more. This isn't just me saying so. This is things that has been studied. IDC Research did a study back in 2023 as AI started to emerge and the ability to be able to structure unstructured data become more prevalent, that 90% of business data is actually unstructured, and about 40% of that data is only used once. Which means there's a good chance that about 36% of the entirety of your business and also supplier data is only being used once, as it remains unstructured in its format, creating data exhaust, right? And I think that this begs the question, what good is artificial intelligence going to be that is working at only 10% of its potential and 10% of your data? This is the importance of focusing on data cleanliness and data structuring to ensure that you can be able to make the most of your supplier data as well. So instead of asking how we can be able to apply AI, I think that it's time that we ask, how do we ensure that we have reliable data? And luckily, again, we are joined here today by our webinar co-host, the guru of supplier data and the classification queen, Susan Walsh. I'm going to hand the word then over to you in that case.
Thank you very much.
To talk about data.
I mean, I used to say I've seen it all, and then I got this crazy messy project last year. So although I think I've seen most of it, I haven't seen all of it, but there is a lot of messy data out there. But the thing is, not everybody knows what to look for. And there are different types of dirty data that you might need to look for in your system. So first of all, we have typos. I've seen supplier names misspelled, like really well-known company names. I've seen terrible invoice descriptions, or actually employee expense data is some of the worst, like travel, carriage, freight. I didn't even know you could misspell taxi, but you can. So getting, and if, again, it's down to, if your AI hasn't been trained in typos, it's not going to know that a taxi spelt with a C is a taxi. You have to train it to do that. So it's really important to, make sure those things are right. And again, part of that is also down to training your team or your suppliers or your customers to actually input that information right in the first place and get them to understand the importance of it. And then there can be really wrong and ambiguous descriptions. We see it all the time, especially with GL codes like services, IT, cleaning, legal. Like, what kind of services? Hardware? Is that IT hardware? Is that cleaning hardware? So having really clear, concise descriptions, and actually if you do have suppliers, if you can get them to put their PO description in their invoice, which should say everything that they're supplying to you, then that will help as well. Then we might have missing codes. So this could be a problem if you need to reorder something and you've got 3 products named the same thing and none of them have a code, and you don't know who the supplier is, or it could even be the same supplier. It could skew your inventory, for example, in your warehouse. You could have a lot more of something than you need, and it might not even be a fast-moving product, for example. One of my favorites, of course, is information in the wrong columns. So we see this a lot with address data. You know, how many times have you seen a postcode or a zip code in the city column, or vice versa? The country is in the postcode column. It happens all the time. So again, it's about training and having some standards. And then obviously, you know, we are now a global business economy. We are not just working in one country or region or even city. And we need to standardize the units of measure or be clear on what we're using, because I could be talking in millimeters and you could be talking in centimeters, or I could be talking in inches and you're talking in miles, and it suddenly gets very confusing, and we end up with multiple versions of the same product or item in our system because it's got different types of measurement for the same thing. And again, that could lead to inventory issues, or even load planning for trucks and software. If you don't put the right information in, that can cause lots of problems. Also currency. So make sure you do your currency conversions correctly. Make sure that you're checking that there are like single or multiple currencies in your data, because it's not always obvious. But before I go on to formatting, which is one of my favorites, I would love, if you're watching now, if you could just try it. I need to put my teeth back in today. I don't know why I can't.
No worries.
I know. If you could type in the chat box. See, I can't say it today. If you could type in the chat box how you would format today's date, I would love to see and show us an example where we can have issues with formatting. And the reason that I say that is because we're probably about to see a range of different ways that dates can be formatted. Thank you, Ollie. Come on, guys, don't be shy. I know you're there, hiding away. So first of all, we've got day, month, year. We might expect to see month, day, year. We might even expect to see year first. Oh wow, that is unusual. Two people the same way. That's interesting. Do you spell the month out or by 3 letters? Do you type out 4 numbers for the year, or do you just do 2? As you can see, it's not just about that, it's also about separators. Do you have separators or not? If you do, is it dashes? Is it slashes? Is it dots? There are so many different ways to format a single date. So having clear, concise rules on that is really important, because you might not be able to find documents you're looking for. They might not be able to match up. If you've got your date the wrong way around and it's a contract date, that could cause a lot of problems if nobody's realized. You know, you think it's starting on, I don't know, you've bought some insurance and you think it's starting tomorrow, but it's actually not starting for 6 months, then you're in trouble. So really important to get those things all standardized.
And already here we see then, you have date, month, year. With slashes, you have year, month, date with dots in between. You have
and then you've
month,
got
day, exactly, year with slashes in
and
between
that's
as well.
just for
very
people.
Interesting.
I mean, I've done this exercise with whole companies and had more differences than this. And that's all like that. They were all based in the UK. And then very quickly, so all of those things lead to duplicates. So that's when you've got to be really careful, and also near duplicates, which are things that are almost the same, but not quite. So we see it in normalization all the time. PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, IBM, I.B.M. You have to look out for those things, because you could be assigning invoices to the wrong account. You could be, can we go back a slide, I think?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, absolutely.
You could be paying companies twice if you have multiple versions of the same supplier. So it's really important. And then these are some really great real life dirty data examples that have actually happened to me. So first up, somebody that I was training up decided to classify LinkedIn as a restaurant, because guess what? It said description in the restaurant. So my lesson here is use context of your data. Look at the supplier, look at the description, look at the value, look at all the information around you. Normally a supplier will have more than one line. So what else is that classified as? Make sure, it will help guide you with your classification. And then my second example is don't ever assume that you know what something is. This is Tinder Corporation, but the description said data cabling. And I knew the client I was working for would never have Tinder, not even for advertising. So I had to do a lot of digging, but I actually found there's a Tinder Corporation Limited in the UK that is an IT services company. So, again, using that context, your knowledge, your background, that will help guide you when you're making these decisions. And then here's some nice, messy, many different ways that you could find Starbucks in your supplier data, depending on whether it's from a credit card, employee expenses, or whether it is like invoices, etc. But so many different ways. And I actually have a fun poll coming up on LinkedIn tomorrow that to get you guys involved in, which if you're watching this on demand will not obviously work. But the poll is going to be that you have to guess how many different versions of Amazon we have in our tool samification that we've normalized, because might surprise you. So that is just different ways that data can appear messy and consistent. And imagine if that was all, this is from different sources, but imagine if this all was one data set and you were individually counting those as suppliers. What would the aggregated, consolidated spend or cost or purchase or sales be once it's all combined? Because that's telling you a very different picture to the individual lines of data there. And also could give you some buying power potentially too that you didn't know you had. So lots of important reasons to keep that data nice and clean and tidy. And then if we go on to the next one, I think we've got some nice messy address data that I was talking about. And again, it's things like we've got center abbreviated, and actually that's the US spelling of center. It could be the European spelling as well. So you could have a third version. And then St. Paul or St. Paul, having standardization in all of this is really helpful. And what it can also lead to is, we see this a lot, I don't know if you do, but multiple different payment terms for the same supplier. Like all of those are the same supplier. They should all have the same payment terms. So it's really important to kind of have those standards and rules and processes in place.
Yeah. And do you see that clients try and make headway also on the intake of this data to try and control it moving forward? And if so, how? They
never even think about it. The only time I would say maybe it might be considered is if there's a new implementation of an ERP or CRM or something like that, and they want to get it right. But a lot of these are legacy systems that have just been added onto layers and layers, and so it's just a mishmash Frankenstein. And I can see Andrew's just saying that he often sees incorrect settings, like type in the UK but comes out in US. We've had issues with Excel where we've had data from clients in the US. And no matter how many times we try, when we open the Excel file, Excel will convert the date to the UK date, even though, and then we can't convert it back. So we had to literally set up a laptop with the US time settings so that we didn't have, because it was messing up and corrupting the data. And I bet that's more common than people realize, especially if you're just pulling something out of system. You might not even realize that it hasn't pulled the dates, especially if there's lots of different columns. So you got to be really careful.
Important with normalization, as you're talking about, and very important.
Yeah. And then, it's really important because there are so many different consequences that dirty data has on you, your work life, your organization, from cost savings to supplier negotiations to supplier rationalization, forecasting budgets. even things like targeting the right customers. If you're in sales and marketing, if you've not got the right information, are you mailing things out to people that are not interested or don't even live there anymore? Worse, sometimes they're dead. It's that can be so much money. Or even, people don't think about this as much, but if you've got a whole load of dead leads in your CRM, you're probably paying the next band up for that. If you chop them all out, you could save some money by going down a band. Get the dead leads out of your system, don't use them. And then, just making sure, the correct codes and descriptions are assigned to products so that we're not shipping out the wrong things to people. Because then they've got to come back, that costs us more, and then we've got to ship the right thing out. And it impacts the bottom line, it impacts profitability, and potentially bonuses for you guys, promotions, headcount, all those things. So it has a knock-on effect.
Absolutely. Where do you see maybe the consequences going in the right direction, so to say? Like, what are the benefits of the clean data that you see when people get it right, related back to supplier management?
Improve negotiations with your suppliers, better visibility, increased profitability, and improved bottom line for your company, which again can impact you in terms of bonuses, promotions, pay rises, etc. Less time spent firefighting and having to fix things that aren't right, and actually being able to get on with the real strategic work. If you actually sat and counted all the time that you spend fixing things here or there, that would all add up in a week. It'd be terrifying.
Indeed.
Yeah.
We have a poll for people, don't we, on their data quality?
We do. I think we've got one more slide, and then I think it's So when it comes to technology, I think that it's often neglected because people think the technology will clean the data and that they don't have to do it. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And then the new tool is implemented, or the AI, Gen AI. You only discover these errors after implementation. Staff lose faith. They don't want to use the tool. It costs a lot of money to potentially fix that, way more than if you just cleaned your data at the start of the project. You then have to hope that staff will readopt that technology, because if not, that project will be abandoned. And then, I was just at a different event and heard that 84% of digital transformation projects fail. So that's not even me over exaggerating. That is fact. And while I can't prove it, I would say a lot of that is definitely down to poor data quality, and then also probably some bad planning, and definitely people. People are the key to all of this. You have to have engaged people on board. But let's do a poll.
But like you say there as well, right? If you lose faith in the data that's at hand, right? Then the people are gone, right? Then the change isn't going to be able to happen. I mean, what is one of the most central parts of, Kotter's, if we're going to go back to like the classic change models of an 8-stage change model, is being able to have good advocates within the business, right? Champions that are going to get excited and loud and proud about a change that you're trying to drive forward. And if you can't trust the underlying kind of change because data is incorrect, but then it becomes the blame goes on a tool or the technology, it's a dicey situation, of course, to be able to try and implement that change.
It's unfortunate, and most people at the working level understand the importance of it. It's as you get the decision making level, that's where, if you don't have the support from senior levels in the organization, it's never going to work.
So we do have a poll, sorry.
Yes.
About people's data cleanliness, correct?
Yes.
What exactly would you guys give yourself if you utilize your voting fingers? Please go ahead and give us a vote.
Completely confidential. We vote. What happens in the room stays in the room.
The results are public, but they will not be shared as to who has answered what. So don't worry. This is a safe space.
I knew there would be a couple of Zs in there.
And I was so surprised by Z being the last answer. I as an American would say F, but Z is way under F. This is
like that's as low as you can get.
Understood. Is
It's
anybody
beyond an
feeling
effort.
very good about their data cleanliness?
No.
I know that there's 38 people in attendance, so let's see, is there anyone else that wants to answer here? Go ahead and answer about how you feel about your data cleanliness in your organization currently today.
I would say at the moment that's probably pretty reflective of what I expected.
Yeah, about 50% of the attendees feel like they're below sea level.
Yeah.
And about 50% at B and C level in that case, with the majority of those being at a C level. Understood. Why do you think that people feel this way, Susan?
You don't get the support to actually, you're expected to clean it yourself, but you've got a million other things, and so it always falls to the bottom of the list. You might not know how to do it. You might not know where to start because it's an overwhelming task. That's the case. Start small. Start with a category or a region or a business unit, something that you can test and figure out, and then maybe scale up. Talk to other people in the business, see if they're doing anything that you can kind of borrow, if they've got data models or a tool that they can help you with, or go to your boss and tell them that you need to talk to me.
And I hope that they do indeed.
Yeah, but I think really, I mean, I always say this when I talk to clients, like, if you're not going to maintain your data once I've cleaned it for you, then there's no point in us even doing the project. You have to clean it and then maintain it. Otherwise, you'll be back to where you were within a year.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? Well, you have to get everybody on board. So this is the data quote framework. So first of all, your data has to be consistent. So let's talk about language, terminology, units of measure, formats, get everybody doing everything the same way, document it, have a solid process so that even if people come and go, the process remains. Once you've got that consistent data, it has to be organized. So categorize that by country, unit, division, whatever it is you need to do it by, get it organized so that when someone asks you, well, how much did we buy in beans from this company last year? You can pull it pretty quickly. Then it's got to be accurate. Now, depending on which part of the business you're in, accuracy will be very different to different people. So define what that is within, your team. And then once you have that consistent, organized, and accurate data, guess what? It becomes trustworthy. And, how often do we hear, oh, we don't trust the data, but it's all we've got. And if you follow that, it's not going to eradicate all the errors, but it will certainly minimize them and hopefully make your life a little bit easier.
Where do you think that the most businesses struggle within the COAT methodology and framework?
Starting with the C, the consistency. But that's very unusual.
Aligning on terminology, understanding what are our units, what are our taggings, what are our segmentations, what are our categorizations.
Yeah. It's very difficult, especially if you've got multiple countries and offices and languages. It gets very tricky. Yeah,
understandably so. Any tips and tricks for people that are looking to be able to try and start there, right? With the one of the most foundational elements of consistency.
Yeah, what your data will tell you where your biggest problems are, whether that is setting up suppliers and getting the right information, or miscategorization or missing information. Look at your data and find out what the key problems are and start by addressing those. So that might be, right, our supplier has to put in the invoice description what they are providing. Services isn't good enough. When we're setting up suppliers, we have to collect these data points and it's a non-negotiable. And focus on one or two things, the really important things. If you're looking at a whole data set, again, I said start small. Start with like 80% of your spend. That will be about 20% of your data. The top 20 suppliers will probably be about 80% or more of your spend. So it's not necessarily an awful lot to deal with. the reality is most of the time the top higher spend is more accurate than the tail stuff, which is where some of the really, but even do an hour in the morning with your coffee every day, just to, warming up in the morning, your first hour of the day, just get it out the way, and small chunks will add up to something, more significant.
Absolutely.
Or call me,
Or call you, absolutely.
And you guys.
I think that what you just hit on was very true, right? And I think that this looks familiar with a lot of people. Spreadsheets all over the place, flying around. We know this, right? There's legacy data on different people's servers, inconsistent across them. The fact is that from sourcing to intake to lifecycle management, this is still one of the primary tools that we're using, right? Is Excel.
I'm having flashbacks from this SAP.
Well, and there's a lot of opportunity, unfortunately, for inconsistencies, right? Back to the most important foundation is consistency within the code framework. And I think that when intake lacks structure and framework within consistency on those different types of classifications, that's of course where you're going to be able to see a lot of issues. And of course, if you don't have it right from the start, then it's hard to be able to clean it up. We think that clean data and SRM is your magic bullet. I believe that obviously we're biased within this opinion, but let's see if we could be able to convince you guys along the way. We surveyed actually over 100 different procurement professionals, and 28% of them were utilizing a supplier relationship management software such as Kodiak Hub or thereabouts. And this was together with Procure Tech that we did last year, a study. You guys can be able to look at that study if you're interested in it. It's very interesting about supplier performance management, in fact. But the interesting thing here, of course, is that this leaves an outlier that was 72% of procurement teams that were still managing suppliers with Excel spreadsheets or homegrown solutions. And this was a stat that we took at the end of last year. So we love to continuously try and update our knowledge of what's going on in the market and how far along our people are coming within their maturity. So I'm going to issue actually a poll now, our second poll of the day. Please feel free to go in and answer on that particular poll. What is the primary tool that you're using to store and also manage your supplier data today? Are you utilizing Excel, a homegrown solution of some sort? Is it primarily your ERP and then a mix of different homegrown solutions or a source-to-pay solution? Or do you have a dedicated SRM like Kodiak Hub? There's got to be somebody in attendance that has.
There we go.
There we go. Fantastic. Excel.
It's interesting as well, actually, because there's been so many like reorgs and restructures and layoffs recently. You could be using something and then that person gets laid off, and then that knowledge and experience in that tool is lost and it's back to Excel. Definitely heard of, people losing out on projects recently because the person that signed off on it has then been laid off, and then the whole thing's just collapsed,
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, here's the fact, right? Whether it's within supplier management and procure tech or fintech or martech or sales tech, the biggest competitor to technology vendors is the status quo. And I think that we see that here, right? The majority of people working in their legacy solutions or Excel or homegrown to be able to manage supplier data. And it's not shocking. It's a trend that we've seen that's been around for quite some time. But we believe that it's, definitely time for change. And if you guys are looking for inspiration on how to be able to build this business case, we've created a lot of great different types of content as well to be able to sell that in, right? Because smart SRM. Yeah, well, smart SRM is kind of the future, we believe, right? Sales and marketing, people like myself have been running around with our glossy CRM solutions for years. Where is procurement's relationship management tool, right?
Yeah.
I think that's for us, it's pretty apparent, right? SRM, and when we talk about SRM, we like to talk about it in a few different frameworks, but this is one of our favorite frameworks, talking about the pyramid, right? Looking at supplier relationship management and the value it can deliver to a business within three primary ranges, really: operational, tactical, and strategic. And these are the different value levers that you can also be able to pull on. But as you see here within this particular model, it's not very odd. Supplier information management, the data, the inputs, is of course the foundation. while it's operational, it also is going to be the steadiest point within your supplier relationship management. Without good supplier information management, reaching these tactical and strategic pinnacles becomes a lot more difficult in that case as well. Susan, I mean, do you have any comments about this from your side?
I mean, it's just starting with something, anything is a great start, and using tools that are fit for purpose is a great start. You know, I think the days of buying one tool to do everything are over, and we're starting to realize that we need a tool for this, SRM or contract management or whatever it is. You know, we can't buy that one tool. And so I love the pyramid.
Well, good to hear. Good to hear. And I mean, we think that this is a pretty good illustration also as to not only where SRM can be able to, you know, kind of supercharge an organization, but also the things that you have on your plate, right? It's a lot. And in that case, you know, good process, good people, good technology is needed to be able to support.
Yeah, and a good quick way to look at, you know, benchmark yourself and see where you are, what you should be aiming for next. You know, if you're at the bottom of the pyramid, don't be aiming for the top, aim for the next couple of rungs up.
That's a great point. It's a great point. And I think that what we recognize is, again, the information stands at the core, right? This is like a rather, I would say, messy slide in certain aspects because there's a lot of information, but I'll walk you through it in that case, right? So let's say that Kodiak Hub or your supplier management solution, whatever it might be, us or someone else, sits at the core. We understand by this particular slide that the information management and being able to take that in from so many different data sources, but also normalize that data from so many different data sources is incredibly important. Because if there is not, again, a consistency within the typifications that you have, then of course you get these wild scenarios, and then you need to call up Susan and of course make sure that your data gets clean. Kodiak sits at the core and becomes an engine for a lot of businesses, helping data to feed in not only from the ERP, but also the data lakes, as well as then other third-party data sources, maybe those structured third-party data sources, but also unstructured third-party data sources. And then also, of course, unstructured data from your suppliers or your internal stakeholders. The importance here is, again, building consistency within the platform, whether it's ours or wherever it is that you're capturing this data, to ensure that that data in the future is going to have some type of comparability across vendors and those that you're capturing that data from. What is the end state? Well, of course, fantastic and beautiful overviews, the things that can help you to drive forward the technical and strategic elements of your supplier relationship. But getting to this kind of end state and the control towers that a solution like Kodiak can help you to build up isn't possible, of course, if you have dirty data in that case. The focus for us is to help people to be able to achieve the strategic goals, right? Driving performance, collaboration, and impact within their supplier base. But what we recognize is, of course, that this isn't just SRM that's helping along this journey. It's also AI in a lot of ways, right? So this is the interesting thing. I think that everybody believes that AI, again, is going to be the self-driving truck, when in reality, what you should be focusing on is, again, the why AI and where and how, right? And what we've been seeing is that the applications for AI technology is best applied currently today in its current state within operational and tactical activities. Most so, in fact, within the tactical activities related back to supplier management. Why? Is because it's helping to augment the day-to-day rather than, of course, doing the job for you. I, of course, experience it in my day-to-day using OpenAI for various tasks. I think that anyone and everyone that creates content or is, you know, on a consistent basis sending emails or trying to be able to look through call transcripts or alike is using the same thing for the same thing, right? It's, again, not changing the way that I am as a professional, but it's helping me to be able to do operational tasks faster, which then gives me more time for strategic activity.
But yeah, you wouldn't just like run it through ChatGPT and then post it. You would scan it, check it, because your knowledge and it's exactly the same with AI for any SRM, procurement, tech. You know, use it, but just use the common sense and knowledge on top as well.
Absolutely. And again, the reminder, SIM stands at the foundation of supplier management and any good supplier management. And that's, again, why data needs to be able to be clean. So a little bit of a summary from our side, why AI, well, maybe fail is a bit harsh, but not work quite as good without clean data and smart SRM. Some of the recap and reality checks for us all. It's a huge shift within our lifetime, but it's only as good as the data that you feed it. And if we don't get our data together first, then AI will have much harder time bringing any value to us. The path to success is, of course, clean data, structured data, utilizing the COAT methodology and great services from people like Susan and the classification guru to make these things happen. Capturing supply chain data in a smart way, formatted, helping your teams to be able to not have to go out there and create their own normal, right? But giving them a normal to be able to feed data into. We believe that SRM can be that magic bullet, but also this is the things that are going to be the end goal, right? Those real strategic insights, being able to track trends, fuel predictive intelligence, and orchestrate procurement processes. These are where we see that AI will be able to make a real impact. But again, without clean data and smart SRM, it's much harder to be able to do so. So, final question. We'll see. Before we sign off, we would love to open it out to anyone and everyone. Thank you very much. And we had our website, so I apologize. So if people want to get in touch, though, with the classification guru, how do they best do so in that case?
Classificationguru.com, or just find me, Susan Walsh, on LinkedIn. That's the best way.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Classificationguru.com, KodiakHub.com if you'd like to get in touch. If there is any questions, we have then another 4 minutes before the top of the hour to be able to field any questions in the chat line. So please feel free to be able to ask any that the attendees that are still here have.
Yeah.
We also have a handout, I believe. That's correct, right? Handout for the presentation. If you would like to get a view of the presentation, we can be able to share that now. So feel free to download the presentation if you would like those particular slides to share internally or alike. And again, if you'd like to get in touch with the Kodiak Hub team, feel free to do so. If you'd like to book a demo with us, you can do so on screen. If you'd like to speak more with Susan to be able to get your data squeaky clean, then make sure to get in contact with the classification guru. And if you don't follow Susan on LinkedIn, you need to start following Susan on LinkedIn because her content is so great. Where have you been? All right. Thank you as well. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Marcus. It does not seem like we have many questions coming in. If there are questions, then feel free to get in touch with us directly. Thank you so much, Susan, for your time today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.